Is that a better outcome for Warma against Mage with the Ogremancers instead of the Mage Scribes, or do you think Mage Scribe is even better than Ogremancer in this matchup?
I'd play Ogremancer like #1. If you're going to ask me like, you know, mid-range minion to play against Mage, I'd take Ogremancer over Mage Scribe for sure. I think the sacrifice he's made is that his lists are a little weaker against Priest. Like if he were to play the Priest Mirror, he might struggle a little bit because obviously Flesh Giants are a very dead card in the Priest Mirror because they're super easy to play around just by not injuring your opponent. We saw that dynamic go down in Americas a little bit as well. He does have a very deep tech in his Tertiary, which he needs in case he's going to come up against the Priest Mirror, where he's playing the South Sea Scoundrels, which have really been defining that matchup alongside with the Cthulhu and the N'Zoth. But I think, honestly, just to reiterate, I think he's nailed anti-mage in terms of how anti-mage his primary already is, and then his ability to tech into that with the secondary. But obviously that leaves him with sacrifices elsewhere. But with how mage-heavy the tournament metagame is this week in Europe, you have to say Warma's got it spot on. Well, if not, say, getting it spot on will probably be just bringing mage based on what we've been seeing so far. But outside of doing that, Warma seems to have nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to do this in a region, then this is the one. So let's see what's going to go down here, though. Early Sethic from Warma with that Holy Smite to clear off this 3-2 from Bozzzton. You know, a small victory, I would say. But it does also look like this Sethic is going to live, which is when things can get very interesting with Warma's palm reading sitting in hand.
This is just abject misery already for Bozzzton, right? Just board control lost on turn 2, Sethic unanswerable, Snowball beginning, no devolving missiles in hand, no flow. What's going right for Bozzzton? Come on, Raven, you're the positive one.
His hair's looking good today. Does that
Nice.
count? Okay.
There we go.
I was wondering whether he's even desperate enough to commit to a cram session in this point, but he is going to hold on to it.
Tempo 1-3. Got him.
I'm reading looks like a good start, especially because, again, arguably the flash heal on the Sethic is now better because it's soaked to ping. So you're not even like losing out on anything if you flash heals this Sethic.
I might have taken the Power Word Feast there. I know obviously it's not playable this turn, but I'm not sure whether he's just going to cycle the second flash heal this turn anyway. No, he isn't. Okay. So the idea here is that he's using that one flash heal he discovered as a Sethic cycle this turn, and then he wants to keep the second one because it's flash heal, right? Yes. And it's actually a very useful card to have in the matchup. But I kind of like just taking Power Feast there because based on Bozzzton's play so far, there's a chance this Sethic just lives again, right? And then you can pop off again next turn with the 1 mana Power Word Feast as a jumping off point. It would have been kind of interesting, but don't hate this. It would have been the nuts here, I can tell you that much.
Oh my, okay. It is tough, right? Because although, again, based on Bozzzton's turn, as you mentioned, it feels unlikely. I would also feel that, well, surely it's so much more likely as the game goes on this is going to get dealt with because there's so many cards Bozzzton could draw, like Devolving, Combustion, Brain Freeze. They're all there. There's so many cards that I actually, you know, I'm okay with it, but it would have paid off pretty greatly for Warma. You are right.
Mm-hmm.
But just go Devouring Plague. Of course, he doesn't get the benefit or the true benefit of why the card's in the deck, which is to help proc Flesh Giants. But it kills a 4-4. It beats a bad turn from Bozzzton and then keeps the game going in the right direction. And mainly, I just don't know what else he could play.
Well, I mean, double benefit in this matchup that he's missing out on from the Devouring Plague, right? Like, number one, he's not discounting his Flesh Giants by 4, but secondary, he's just not healing for 4, which is kind of vital as well. And I think, you see just how greedy he's willing to be with this card for that exact reason.
Does get 1 proc before he has to trade in that Sethic, of course.
A beam of sunshine finally cracks through Bozzzton's window as Incanter's Flow appears in the hand. Yeah, so looking at Bozzzton's hand now. Oh, okay. I was going to say, if he Incanter's Flows this turn, he has to then build a setup for Aegwin into Cram Session, right? On turn 7. This is why as well. The point
go around the other way.
Yeah, and the point suddenly seems a lot less insightful because the Ogremancer appeared in the hand, but this is what the play was playing around, right? He just was getting a minion front-loaded on the board first. We've seen this back and forward in Priest mirrors even, in the other regions where they're just playing out minions preemptively for this exact scenario, right? So now Bozzzton is there. Exactly. You saw the little nod, right? The little just, yeah, I'm good at this game. That's right. Just understanding that if Ogremancer came down and he hadn't preloaded minions, he was going to have to do the miserable thing of just blasting multiple spells into it or hoping devolving missiles landed, all those things that you don't want to do. But now just having a minion and B, spell damage in play preemptively, he's in a much better spot to deal with Ogremancer.
Still not completely simple. There are still multiple options for Bozzzton here as to what he would want to do.
Look how simple that is, Raven. It's delightfully simple.
Yeah, it's just, oh, I guess he can combustion or brain freeze, sure.
Yep. Cram session, brain freeze, this turns nuts.
Yep.
He deserves it as well. Like this was set up. He had, like, obviously not this exact turn in mind, but he had this very much set up in terms of being able to piece together the clear with the shooting star. Diverts from the brain freeze onto the second incanter's flow at the last minute, which I like as well. This
not going to argue with that.
Not really a relevant threat at this point. So yeah, discount your deck. Gain 16 more mana.
And also with devolving, like, okay, the Blade Master gets Apotheosis, trades, and heals for nothing. Then you devolve it. It's like, it's just not a problem, right?
Yep.
Imagine this is going to be Zyrella here. Yep, Warma keeping the turn very, very simple here, keeping it 1-5. It might not look like much, but it's still a threat on board, and the health total is what's important here because of that card on the far left of Bozzdton's hand, which is, of course, the Mask of Cthulhu.
What to do? What to do?
Bozzdton has a great hand. He just has to do some puzzling to work out exactly how and when things are going to hit face here because, again, versus Priest, you really don't want to be using burn cards against minions. So there are other things he could have done, such as like Devolve, Brain Freeze, Combustion was an option here to clear the board and retain the face damage, but Bozzdton's chose to go a different way, going with the Apexis Blast. He wants the minion now, but if this minion gets answered, which it can do if Warma chooses, with Hysteria this turn, then it feels like he's just missed 5 damage to face, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I was expecting that turn to just start with some card draw, and then, as you were saying, just pieces of brain freeze, combustion, devolving missiles. Hopefully, avoiding using the devolving missiles. Right? Like I think the dream was arcane intellect into primordial, get some spell damage, and then use the brain freeze and the combustion to clear up and hold on to the devolving missiles since it's the nuts. And that way you get an extra minion on board as well with the spell damage minion that you pick up. But obviously, a lot of different ways you can end up going if you start the turn with card draw there. But yeah, was not expecting to see the Apexis Blast getting shot at a minion there.
Desperate Prayer being picked up for Warma there. Just wants extra heal. Chose not to Hysteria as well.
Yeah, just leaving the 5-6 up, but I guess taking the Desperate Prayer does counteract that naturally. I will say that against the Giants version in particular, having the Brain Freeze is a very, very valuable tool. Because even devolving missiles on a flesh giant leaves a 5-drop, right? So you're leaving behind a Yeti on average. You're leaving behind a 4/5. So if you can't then freeze that at that point, it's still a beefy apotheosis target that can then come down and ruin your day. So I think a lot of the time being able to freeze giants is better than devolving them in like race scenarios in the late game, which might go to show why Bozzdton was so eager to hold on to that brain freeze. Does make some sense.
Yeah, rigged fair game. Although normally the choice does feel a little bit rough here with the cards he's got. And this, this surprises me a little bit here. I did wonder whether it would have just been better to trade the 4/4 in. I think this 5/6 feels pretty immortal without their, like on its own on the board, right? Not has to worry about Hysteria.
Yeah, it's still not that big a deal. Actually, it is a pretty big deal for Hysteria, right? Because the Netherwind portal is now going to spawn a third minion.
Right. Oh yeah, there you go. Seems good.
Yeah.
And it would have saved the brain freeze. Yeah, I think just using that 4/4 would have been fine to kill off the Scorpid.
Yeah, I like that too.
Wow, that's a big Scorpid now.
Alright, devolving. Probably Mask this turn. Although, if he's not starting with Arcane Intellect, that's a little surprising if he's going to go for that turn. Just going to play the Glacier Racer instead? Okay, cool. I mean, he's double flowed, so like I massively value drawing cards potentially over just playing out a little 1/3 in this position, because you just have no concept of where that turn can go, how much mana you can refresh, 0 mana, Ruined Orbs, all that kind of business coming out. But
Warma gets hold of it, Mage Scribe gets to heal with that Divine Plague at last, and also generating 2 spells. Not fantastic here. And I imagine he's going to, stay away from that Shadow Form. He wants to get way more health back as much as he can very quickly, because 17 is not safe here. Lethal?
Yeah, so Aegwin, he's down to 4. Springwater, he's back up to 6. Then Brain Freeze does 5. Yeah, this should be lethal. This should be. He needs help, but it should be lethal. I think on average he kills him this turn.
He can't play double Fireball. Well, that's incorrect. He can play double Fireball. It does not kill him, I should have said.
Correct.
Yes. So triple Devolving is going to make this Brain Freeze almost certainly kill the minion.
Yes.
And then he probably just locks in the Mask, right?
Those Ruined Orbs, that's what. But that's when I said he's favored to kill him here. Those two 0 mana Ruined Orbs is what I was talking about.
He can intellect into them, right?
Can intellect into them, yeah. But there are 5 cards remaining, so he doesn't necessarily hit them. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I was ready for the bug. Yeah, take the Mask now again. Empty board. That's the rule.
Yep. But you can see just the fact he had to spend that 1 mana on the Arcane Intellect to hit one of those Ruined Orbs is what ended up costing him lethal there. I think, yeah, I stand by the statement that I think on average he did kill him, but he needed to hit one of those 0 mana Ruined Orbs off all of the Cram Session and Springwater nonsense that he played before he hit the AI.
And now this is where you know you're just having a bad time, because Warma doesn't have an Apotheosis with a big minion. There's no Samuro to do something funky with. Yes, there's Devouring Plague, but Bozzzton is going to have 2 cards left in his deck and has not played his 2 Fireballs yet. So Warma will not be feeling confident about his the length of this game.
This is such a disaster, Raven, because like the fact that Bozzzton was able to put Warma to 1 specifically is so important, because Warma needs to spend mana on healing just to play around ping to face, right? And if he spends mana on healing, he's then, from his perspective, potentially not able to dump enough burn from his opponent's hand to deny the lethal on the other side.
Well, also, this is tough because he's given him lethal anyway, right?
Yeah.
With Shadow Form.
That's true, yeah.
It's just so...
I mean, he has to heal, right? He
yeah.
He heal either way, so...
Yeah.
He still has ping, Shadow Form, ping for lethal, so this is just always going to be guaranteed lethal.
But you've cast Shadow Form, right? Yeah. Like, heal Shadow Form Alusha?
I think he had to, yeah. Like, the play that Warma made was guaranteed death, right? Because he knows he's not going to get any healing out of Bozzzton's hand. So he knows he ends that turn at 3, and he knows the hand that he's given to Bozzzton deals 3 to him.
And it beats Counterspell, right?
Yeah, however, I mean, even then, there must have been something in that hand that breaks Counterspell at that point as well.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, he gave him a hand that would beat him if he had a Ring Toss, for example, that he stole from Thingy. Yeah, so it would even beat Counterspell.
But, you know, it's very easy for me, sat in my ivory tower, to say, well, that play was wrong. But, like, can I tell you Can I tell you what the play was that actually beat Bozzzton on average? No, because I don't think it existed in that position, right? That's why I was focused on just, well, you know, Bozzzton didn't kill him, and I think he was favored to kill him from the position he started in. But the fact he put him to 1, which made it mandatory for Warma to have to heal that turn, made it so much more difficult because Warma had to spend mana on healing that he could not then spend on just chucking fireballs out of Bozzzton's hand.
Yeah, and you see there one of those. It sounds weird to say like it was a close escape, but that's when, as mage, you can feel like, oh, this priest is so dead next turn. Then Alusha comes down and you lose. So you do have to keep an eye on some of those outs, right? When you sat on a handful of cheap burn, you can't be confident because if Alusha comes down, you might just lose, whether it's to just being lethaled instantly or just having all your burn thrown away. And then the game continues. And of course, the longer the game goes, the more chance the priest has of getting back into it, right?
And I think that all went through Bozzzton's head on the previous turn as well. It's hard to cover everything that you have to think about in a spot like that. You know, the turn started, I looked at the Aegwin, the Springwater was drawn, I sort of took a rough look at the deck and said, yeah, you probably kill him there, right? So then you start trying to do it. When you then get into the point where that lethal then fails, even playing that Arcane Intellect that Bozzzton ended up playing, he probably had second thoughts about playing that because it puts more potential cheap 0-cost, 1-cost burn into his hand that can then be dumped by the Alusha on the other side, right? Like, if you hadn't have put him to exactly to 1 and you draw too many cards and you have every burn card in your hand and Warma can play them all in one turn with an Alusha on the other side, then there's the potential that you can get absolutely dumpstered. So it's an incredibly complex game state to navigate through at the end. That Alusha creates, and I think Bozzzton maybe somewhere in there was a minor like missequencing that could have led to a lethal. I didn't spot it. It looked fine from where I was. I think he was just unlucky on the draws, but there's so many spots that you have to avoid, so many pitfalls that you have to avoid to not just randomly throw games against Priest.
And let me take you on a kind of funny journey, right? Warma switched to his secondary, which makes sense. Desperate Prayer, plus 2 Horde Operative, plus Light Shower Elemental. Bozzzton has switched to his secondary, Cthulhu, makes sense. And more secrets with a rigged fair game and a ring toss in there for the Horde Operatives to eat. So yeah, it's very, very funny the way these two have gone for this, but it makes sense overall, the Cthulhu for Bozzzton, of course. So both players switching over to those secondaries. So let's see now if Warma's secondary is as strong as he's making it out to believe and can pull off the reverse sweep.
I think you got it right the first time, Raven. I think Warma has become a desperate player because Bozzzton's just about to play. Bozzzton's just about to play double flow on him
with Phoenix Cram Session. Oh,
yep, disgusting. Oh, blast on curve as well. Oh,
but what do you do while the Phoenix is getting ready? Right?
Yeah.
It always takes ages in the bathroom. What do you do? Well, you just Apexis blast someone in the face as well. Oh, insane.
All right, so here you go. This is the goods. This is the draw for next turn for Bozzzton. Primordial Studies for 0. Play it. Lab Partner. Apexis Blaster 3/6. Good GG game. Close.
Even so, without that, he does get to kill the Scorpid, right? So if he wants to aim it at a minion at all, but you imagine he would, gets rid of the poison and still has a strong top. Remember when we said Aegwin into turn 5 was good? Well, Aegwin into turn 4 is pretty good too.
Yeah. And honestly, like, jokes aside, when the Scorpid coming down, like, even if the Primordial Studies have been drawn, you probably end up just blasting the Scorpid at that point anyway.
Apotheosis is going to be a nice response here, though, for Warma. He does at least get to remove the Aegwin, but there's more spell damage where that came from.
Why would you pay mana to draw 3 cards, Raven? What are you, an idiot?
Well, it depends who you ask, honestly, but, you know.
Yeah.
3 mana more of Cthulhu. Oh, refreshing spring.
Oh.
Have fun, Bozzzton. Enjoy this.
Oh, I'm not having a good time. I feel sick. I want to go home.
I'm having a great time because the way I cast is I put myself in the position of whoever's winning.
Ah, okay. Turn this car around, right?
To just... Oh, okay, he's going for counter spell. I was interested whether he just takes like Snap Freeze because it's the cheapest, most dumpable card. Because right now, we don't need secrets where we're going, Sol.
His deck's so bad. Why have we drawn Cthulhu pieces? Like, why don't we just have good cards in our deck and the game would be over at this point? Like,
why isn't this just lethal?
yeah, exactly. It's so frustrating. We're just like drawing so many bad cards instead of good ones because we have Cthulhu pieces in our deck. But okay.
Now Arma's like, Ogremancer might not be enough this turn.
Is it Mind Render time already? Like, you could potentially dump so much good stuff, but you don't have the hand yourself to be able to do it, right? Your own hand is too high quality. I think it's fine. Which, again, like, I want to make this point again because I feel like we all as a community, like, saw Meaty tweet this thing about, well, you can't play Rigged Fair Game because they just steal it with Mind Render. And we all just, like, read it and nodded sagely and stroked our beards. Like, yes, I am very wise and I understand that point perfectly and I will never play Rigged Fair Game again. But, like, that just assumes that on any given turn they can play Mind Render and feel good about it. It's just not the case. Like, they have good cards in their hand. They can't just dump Mind Render on any given turn. Let alone the fact that they can't then play Burn at that point, because then that deals damage to you and doesn't proc your Rigged Fair Game and doesn't put the cards into your hand. Like, I really don't think it's that simple, and I really think Rigged Fair Game is still a very, very good card against Priest.
So yeah, if anyone's wondering about that monologue there from Sol, he is very passionate about this subject.
I am!
The second he started talking, I was like, I'm just going to sit back and listen to this. I've heard it all before, but I'm going to listen.
The second I started, the first word, Raven not only knew exactly what I was going to be talking about, but just decided to let me do it.
I literally just leaned back in my chair and waited.
My job's easy. Just wind him up and let him go, and I just get to sit back and chill.
Well, in the end, though, for Warma, it was the Ogremancer, and even though it looks bad on the way we can see it, of course, I have to agree that what else was he going to do, right?
Yeah.
Right, play the Ogremancer, make Bozzzton have to deal with it, because he does. Bozzzton can't just ignore it at this point, and just hope a better turn comes along.
Time runs out on me.
A forbidden play. So what do you think about this play, Sol?
Yeah, do it. Go ahead. Play Mind Render. Wow, I'm really scared of you Mind Rendering my hand and drawing 3 cards right now. End of the world. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, from Warma's point of view, you can't, even though Sol's very, like I said, passionate about this specific set of plays, Warma has nothing to do, right?
It's just like, it was just that play just concedes. Like, it's just not even good.
My point is, though, if Warma played a light shower, it doesn't achieve, really.
No, of course.
My point is, in this specific game, Warma has nothing better going for him, right? Like, he has to hope there's some miracle cards in Bozzzton's hand.
Yes. In serious terms, playing Mind Render here has actually done a lot of good things, right? Yes. He does draw 3 extra cards, great. He's also denying lethal most of the time on the following turn, right? He couldn't just let Bozzzton have his own hand on this turn with +4 spell damage, right? That's ludicrous. He couldn't let that opportunity. He couldn't let that happen. So it does do a lot of good things, but it's just at the end of the day, like, it just doesn't matter that much, right?
The first rule of Hearthstone that you learn is that the rules you are given aren't always necessarily real. You have to break them. Very interesting to see how Bozzzton plays out his own turn. Again, I echo what you were saying earlier, where, hey, Ogremancer's pretty good against Priest too. And I just look at the Ogremancer and think, well, what if you just play that? Like, what is the answer? Could also arguably just dump the Zyrella, because that's just the board clear in some way.
That's true. That's a good point.
Maybe you just play Zyrella and say, well, empty my board now,
I think you're right, yeah, because Devouring Plague Zyrella is in hand, right? So the Zyrella is probably just the scariest thing. So you could also just dump the Devouring Plague instead, right? Which largely does the same thing. It also clears up the minion and plays around like a Apotheosis top deck, I suppose.
Yeah, I was just thinking he does play like the natural Desperate Prayer, right, as well?
Yes.
So I was just thinking, I mean, there are still ways, of course, but yeah, dump one or the other as long as you don't give them a board clear combo, right?
But I think... Okay, nice. I think deleting the healing is better than deleting the board clear, because you don't care about the board clear, right? You have 20 damage in your hand if your opponent can't heal, so...
I must consider...
Tough one for Warma, honestly. I do think that this approach is the better approach we've seen of Priest versus Mage.
I agree. Yeah.
I just don't think you're beating Mage when he does this. It's just too good, and I don't think anything's beating Mage when it does this.